But we have this
hobby.
question hanging over us, Joe. We need to talk about your infidelity.
You are once again trying to control.
I'm pushing.
You
I'm
are
controlling this
pushing.
because my feelings are hurt.
I did go elsewhere for wasn't a podcast technically.
Okay. Well, that makes it better.
It was a live stream.
Yeah.
And I tried a couple of times to get you onto the Discord, and you were like, off with you. I'm not
confused. No time for that.
No time for that. And
I don't brook Discord in my life.
So yeah, I went on to a live stream from Legion of Myth. I think it must have streamed to YouTube. They have plenty of followers for that.
That's where I watched it.
I joined it while he was already going, and he had invited a couple other folks, and we had an interesting discussion about the importance of D&D and Gary Gygax and Grognards and OSR, and he was instead of calling him names, which I could do.
No, I don't
unkind.
think so. That would be unkind. The guy was okay. It was you and Max and Aaron the Pedantic and Scott Garibay, I believe was his name.
Yes.
He came on he was one of the live stream guys chatting with Max. I don't think Max planned this completely, did he? He invited you, right?
Right. He just invited. He asked me to come on.
Okay.
Aaron happened to be, joined. He knew they were having a live stream, and he was in the, whatever you call it, the chat or whatever.
Yeah, the chat room. Yeah.
And I don't know if John asked him to, or if he just came of his own accord. And then somebody suggested the other fella.
Yeah.
Scott,
who had a different viewpoint. You three were you and Max and Aaron were mostly simpatico in your ideas.
Yeah, we're OSR, at the very least, OSR adjacent.
Yes. And as you were talking, they had several discussions, and I could, and look, this Scott guy, I thought he made a valiant attempt to support his background, but he said a couple of things that were actually not true. Well, let's put it this way. You know me, I'm kind of an aficionado. I'm not aficionado, but I've become recently a fan of the history of the game.
Right.
Aaron the Pedantic even mentioned Secrets of Blackmore. I was expecting him to say something when the guy said Dave Arneson wasn't really that big of a player in the creation of D&D. And I understand what he's saying, because from what I've seen, maybe not so much in Secrets of Blackmore, but in other places, I think Dave was not so good at getting manuscripts quickly and on time to Gary to get it into a book. And I think most people know that D&D was created, the OD&D white box was Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax. And then Gary made Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, didn't give Dave any credit. And that started I think there ended up being a rift, and it ended up causing a lawsuit of which Dave Arneson won money, an undisclosed amount of money for. But some folks say Gary just couldn't count on Dave doing that. But I do believe, from what little, and I have Secrets of Blackmore, I have Designers and Dragons, which I'm going to quote from, some other things too. That's a series by, I think it's Shannon Appelkline. He did a history of role-playing games, and I've got 4 books, 70s, 80s, 90s, and aughts of the history of RPGs. And it's pretty clear, I think, that Arneson, from what I've seen, started the idea of a role-playing game. He has to be given credit for role-playing. I think he's the first to do it, even if you don't count. I won't go too far in the weeds, but he was definitely the co-creator, and I think he DM'd Gary first and taught Gary about it. And Gary said, "Whoa, this could be awesome," because Gary was coming from a wargamer viewpoint. Now, I'm not taking away from Gary, but I think Arneson was initially the idea guy. And I know in Secrets of Blackmore, he says, he goes, Dungeons and Dragons, he has this little statement at the beginning of the video. D&D started in 72 or something, which is 2 years before the white box. And he goes, if you ask me how I know because I created it. and he taught a class at Full Sail University, and I think it said that in 2009, after his death, Full Sail University honored his legacy by naming building on the campus for him. It's the only known honor of this sort for a member of the role-playing profession. I think Arneson has got a little weight behind his name. That's where I think, for one, Scott was off. Arneson's a pretty big deal.
Right.
Gary got the lion's share of things because he was more prolific. And in the end, you got to give Gary the most credit because he really brought it to the masses. So it's not like he didn't. I'm not pooping on Gygax. I'm just saying Arneson was probably the idea guy.
Yeah, I think it's pretty well known that Gygax was the business guy.
Well,
maybe not great at business, but he's the one who pushed it. He was very what's the word? Aggressively business-like.
And he got stuff done. He literally could. He had made games before,
right?
And then Rob Kuntz, who is he lived with Gygax when he was young, because his family life was bad. This is a good credit to Gary, and he took Rob in. And I got this website linked. Hopefully you'll put it in the show notes, where a guy talks about a paper that Rob Kuntz wrote. And he said, the argument is stated that Dave Arneson's vision of what RPGs can be is stunted and too strongly tied to what have become more and more rigid rules with each version of D&D. He thus seems to advocate what those in the OSR movement are all about, rulings, not rules, and using the parts that fit what is right for you and your group. He points out that Gary Gygax advocated this early on, but for financial and profit reasons, he developed more rules to keep players tied to his version of the game rather than getting by without rules. While this is demonstrably true based on Gygax's own writings, it is not new. Within these pages, it is stated that Dave Arneson is the origin of role-playing, and stating that Dave Wesley's Brownstein, I'm going down a hole, or Gygax and Perrin's Chainmail are not true antecedents of the fantasy game, later marked as Dungeons and Dragons. These were Kuntz's words on the letter, the last part. So my thought is, yeah, I think he was off there. I mean, and the Designers and Dragons even say none of the histories in Designers and Dragons would have occurred without the two of them. And that was referencing Gygax and Arneson. So he's definitely, I think it's even, but if you're talking about who was the most innovative, I'm going to have to say creating a whole new style of game goes to Dave.
Right. And Scott Garibay put that all on Gary.
Yeah. And I think he seemed to want to put through Arneson's.
Yeah. And then as if Arneson was just some associate that had really nothing to do with anything. Yeah. Which, I don't know that anybody can really do that with any credibility. But it seems to, but from the conversation, I think that is he's fashioning that revision of history from my point of view. That doesn't seem right. No. That revision of history from his, I won't say worship because that'll put him in a very negative light.
He was a huge fan of Gygax.
He said that Gygax should have a statue erected in his honor that is larger than the Statue of Liberty, because Gygax is that important, and that
America,
right, and that, well, probably the world or the universe, yeah, right. But and that the game that Gary created, Arneson didn't matter,
right,
is in essence kind of transformative of the culture at large.
That was his main argument, wasn't it? Was transformative.
Yeah, it's everywhere. D&D is everywhere. You can ask anybody about role-playing games and they'll say D&D. And I'll have to say, if you say role-playing game to most people, they'll say, what is that?
I think to give him I'll give him a couple of nods. One, I think D&D is clearly bigger than it's ever been.
Sure.
It's part of the zeitgeist of modern popular culture, for sure. I don't think that's due to Gygax. I think it's due to Critical Role. I think what I mean by that is, I think the reason everybody knows D&D now are places like Critical Role, Vin Diesel, the different people. Who's the night show, the late show host that plays?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a late show host that plays. Dang it.
There's also the Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, Big Bang Theory. I'm just saying it all got in there, and it is, but I think he's given it a little bit too much.
It has a place in nerd culture.
Agreed.
It had a big place.
A big place. It's the big boy table.
It has a smaller place in culture at large, but I don't think it has transformed our culture in any kind of way.
No.
I think it also kind of carried, the focus. Some people would say that nerds are kind of popular now. Yes. So, and the ones that have brought their love of the game with them.
Yes.
So, and then there's enough people that play it that it could be mentioned in a number of venues and people will recognize it. Some people, but I still think most regular people. Now, most regular people, if you say Dungeons and Dragons, they might recognize that. But true. If you say role-playing game to them, they will say, what?
Right. Or at best, if they have a hint of nerd culture, they'll go, wow. You mean like WoW, like World of Warcraft? I've got
maybe. Yeah.
But they have to be nerd adjacent. Right. If they're not, now back when we were young, Dungeons and Dragons. Oh, you mean that game where you worship Satan?
Yeah, back in the day.
I heard that a lot in the early 80s.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that, but not so much now. I will say, and maybe this is what he's hoping for, is 5e has brought D&D, or 5e has hit upon a time where D&D's coming out with a new edition at the right time. I wonder if 4th edition had waited until 2000, was it 9 whenever 5e came out? Something like that. 2009, 2012. I don't know. Anyway, if that had been 4th edition's release, would it have still had the same? Would it have been just as big? Meaning, if 3rd edition had just come out when 5e did, I don't know if it's 5e the game, or if it's the fact that role-playing games have got a big seat at the table now, and people like to role play, and it's computer games have helped D&D too, back and forth. So yeah, I'm not sure. Now I will say this too about Arneson. You could make an argument that a good idea and $5 might get you a Happy Meal. So him being if it had just been Arneson's baby, I don't know if D&D would have come out in 74.
Yeah, but if Gygax was the only one involved, it would have been a similar situation. He would have had a war game, right? It would have been totally different. It took the two. It had to have been the two of them working together, and others too.
Sure, yeah.
It's not like they were by themselves in a vacuum.
Oh,
so there were others involved.
And Tim Kask, he helped out early on. I mean, there were several old school guys. And Dave, if you watch Secrets of Blackmore, a lot of dudes that play tested that game with him, and it came out of that Brownstein game, which is kind of a role play war game that one other dude, I don't have his name, but yeah, so I don't know about that. So I think he was trying to push something that was
he's okay.
Not quite
the way I looked at it afterwards was do you remember Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
Yes.
Okay. When Richard Dreyfuss was sitting at the dinner table, and all of a sudden he started looking at his mashed potatoes. And forming them into a mound.
Right.
And then I'm not sure how long it was supposed to have occurred in the movie. It's been a while.
Yeah.
He created a giant sculpture that resembled a mountain.
Okay.
And in the midst of that, he was looking at before it became much, he was looking at his pile of mashed potatoes. And he said, this is important. This means something.
Right.
So Dreyfuss's character was getting some sort of psychic impressions from aliens who were about to land.
Right.
So some really big earth-changing event was about to happen.
Right.
And he was kind of keyed in.
Sure.
And so Scott Garibay is Richard Dreyfuss' character, and the mashed potatoes is D&D.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
he's looking at D&D as some, maybe not cosmically meaningful, but definitely historically, culturally, not quite religiously, but it seems close with the whole statue thing. Important. And yeah, that's the way I looked at it. Our
Historically
conversation.
speaking, D&D, the game, is not quite 50 years old yet. It will be soon. We'll bring that up later.
Mhm.
But I think it has a small imprint on the United States culture, and even smaller. And because it's created so many of the role playing games, it created a whole industry. It was a whole style, a new style of game where there's no win conditions. So I would say it has an imprint and historical. At a bare minimum, it deserves a solid, strong footnote.
Yeah.
In annals of history.
Yeah.
It might even get a sentence.
Right
now. In the end, it could be more significant. But right now, another thing I had, and so he was trying to imply then that he said this. He was really disappointed that old grognards like you guys weren't on the front lines jumping into 5e and play testing. Why do you think he wanted? I couldn't figure out why he wanted people that he basically wanted to say OSR people should like 5e and be a part of it so they can shape the game through the surveys or something.
He's a D&D evangelist, a 5th edition evangelist.
Okay.
And he was fashioning his argument in such a way to shame us into, oh, maybe I should do this. And the way he fashioned his argument was that we were lazy cowards for abandoning D&D and going into the OSR style games, because like you said, he repeated this a few times.
Yeah.
That our voice was missing.
Yeah.
From the D&D community, and we kept telling him that we don't want that community. And he made it seem like there was a community, one, and it's D&D and it's 5th edition, and that's the community.
Well, that's a different topic, but I agree. Yeah, that's something else. But I was going to say, I thought Scott seemed like a pretty nice guy. He wasn't being a butthole, no. But he did make comments. I think the idea that you should not abandon 5e, and I'm not saying, and I really haven't at all. I like 5e. I'll play it. Joe will, if I twist his arm, he'll play it. He'll play it though if I twist his arm. Don't let him tell you otherwise. But he ain't gonna run nothing, and he ain't gonna buy any books. But the point is, WotC, and I thought Aaron the Pedantic made a great point. Once we're fun, that last survey, I was doing it too. I had the same experience as him. I've answered 4 or 5 questions, and they booted me out and they were questions about what I played. He said BX, and I was like, I was messing around with Swords and Wizardry, and boom, I was gone. So what it is, that voice that Scott thinks we should have, they don't want to hear it.
No.
If they did, they would let us stay in there and answer more questions and say, why are you playing this? How come you're not playing 5e? What don't you like? They don't want that question to be. They don't want to ask that at all because they don't want those answers.
We, as much as he was trying to make it sound at the same time that he was calling us lazy cowards, you're lazy cowards, but the community needs you. They don't need us, and they don't want us, and we matter very little. We're in a niche hobby, and we're a niche part of that niche hobby. The grognards like us, though I'm not fully, there's the grognards that are like, if you don't play 1st edition straight by the rules, you're not playing D&D. That's a group of people. Maybe even 2nd edition. I'm pretty sure 1st edition or maybe even Beckme. Or
I guarantee there's people that say if you're not playing the white box, you're not playing D&D.
Right. So we're not even that. We just don't like the current direction that WotC has taken the game. We liked 3rd edition, though I think if it came out now, we probably would still favor more OSR games, most likely. But
I don't know.
It's possible.
I felt like our 3rd edition experience, Joe, was the right, it might have been lightning in a bottle, the right time. And when I say that, we played 10, 12 years and Pathfinder. I don't know about you, I was drawn to, oh, look, they have codified movement and attacks and the round and full round action and attack action. And they'd codified movement. So where you're using the minis and spacing, it was a new part of the game that was really significant. Not that you couldn't use minis before, but this really latched onto it. And something about third edition spoke to me. And then after 8, 10, 12 years, whatever it was we played, after Pathfinder, I was like, I'm kind of tired of counting squares all the time.
Right.
This chess game's driving me crazy. And so we're being drawn back to a simpler
games. Yeah.
Older games.
Or an older mindset at the very least.
Yes, I agree. Because you and I definitely have some fondness. I liked how you got after 13th Age a little bit. Our buddy Dave and others that are big fans of 13th Age should really watch that, because Joe, I think, eloquently states some of the issues he has with 13th Age that just has wore on me too as time passed. The whole can't do random encounters. Look, that's just, I don't like a completely cookie cutter scenario. And that's
very predictable.
It is.
It's
the game
very predictable.
We talked about its predictability, and it wears me out a little bit.
Yeah.
Now he made a comment too about Lorraine Williams, and a lot of folks have given her some crap. And he was saying that she wasn't that bad. The prevailing theory is either she was pretty good, she saved the company with her crafty business mindset, or it's a theory that she ran it into the ground. And from what I've read, it seems like that most of the people at TSR when she was there, the co-workers, thought day to day she was fine. But Designers and Dragons makes several comments about her situation. One of them was, Gary Gygax was the co-creator of our industry who drove its growth through its first decade before he was unceremoniously unseated from his position at TSR, first by the Blooms, then by William. So the Bloom brothers sold their shares to William after she had been brought in by Gygax. And she's a part of the Buck Rogers dynasty. Her family is from that. And she tried to make the Buck Rogers role-playing game, which was a colossal failure, and a few other things. She did professionally manage TSR for a while. The thing was, she wasn't really a gamer at all. Some say she looked down on gamers, but again, most of the folks that work with her seem to say at least she was pleasant enough. So I don't know if that was true or not. Lawsuits definitely increased once Williams took the helm. Remember TSR used to stand for, how they say it?
T and a $R.
Yeah, and boy, they would sue you if anything even remotely came out on the internet about D&D. And there's rumors that once she got in there, the reason Gygax left, and he intimated that Gygax just left because he knew he was done, or I don't know how Scott portrayed it.
No, I'll tell you.
Okay, thank you.
The way he said it was, he knew that D&D was bigger than him.
That is not why he left.
No.
It says, let me find this here. If anything, their lawsuits increased after Lorraine Williams took the helm. Many of these new lawsuits were against an interest that Gary Gygax was involved in post-TSR. This led to speculation that Williams was pursuing a vendetta against Gygax because of his failed attempt to prevent her from taking over the company. He tried, once she bought those shares, to take it to a judge to say, hey, this was not right. But apparently he didn't have enough money to stop her. So that was really it. I mean, I think he had a point, something about how they couldn't, the Bloom brothers can't do that. But I think it's hard for me not to believe that the Blooms and Williams at some point had a problem with Gygax. But to be fair, he was kind of playing Hollywood at the end. He was out in California for a while doing the cartoon and talking with the bigwigs, trying to get a movie done. He wasn't back home producing more content, which they needed. I mean, at least that's the feeling I got. But this Designers and Dragons, at least the 70s edition, I would suggest anybody that has that book or can access, it's a good read to see what happened. And their statement is basically, in the end, TSR was her company, and she finally did run it into the ground. And not that she was bad, but in the end, I mean, they were doing stuff like selling crochet kits, D&D stuff. What else was it? There were some other things too they were selling. Dragon Dice was a good idea, but they went crazy on it, bought too many and overproduced it. And she went crazy with the novels. I remember when the novels blew up. It's a new novel every week. And they just got too deep in debt to certain people for producing that stuff, and they couldn't keep it up. And then she ended up having to sell to WotC. Though I think Scott was right. I think she did make a pretty penny off of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that doesn't mean she's
that doesn't mean anything.
I would guess from, and again, there's different people say different things. I would say Lorraine Williams at best was mediocre because she had some good and some bad. When she first came in, she was better at organizing she was more of a business person than a lot of the people that ran it. They were gamers who ran a business. She was a business person, but she did have a hand in running it.
If D&D was making good stuff and making good money and was profitable and all that stuff, when she sold it, Wizards would probably have not done a whole lot except maybe a couple of positions and just let it go. Kind of like Hasbro when it bought
Wizards.
There might have been some managerial things going on, but they pretty much let Wizards people handle the game production.
Yes.
Now, 5th edition might have been a Hasbro decision. I don't know. But it was probably 11 months, I think, is what we figured. Is either just under or just over a year when the last really D&D product came out.
Yeah.
And we were all like, what's going on with TSR, blah, blah, blah. And then we found out that Wizards of the Coast bought it, and we're like, oh, maybe they'll do something with it. So it wasn't like they were doing anything. It was like a year. It was a year.
They had pallets of product that they couldn't move because they had to pay for it still.
Right.
The printers, they owed like millions of dollars to printers, of what I heard. I mean, I remember waiting for my Dragon magazine subscription. Like, I haven't got a Dragon magazine for 4 months. What's going on? And I'm going to the store, nothing new. I've got all the crap. There is nothing new. That's crazy.
Right. So if she was running a tight ship, I'm not sure. It doesn't seem like it to me.
No, I don't think so. And here's one thing that this shows to the possibility of her being petty. And I don't know. This is what I read. And I'm not sure where I got this, but it's probably Designers and Dragons. It says Williams and TSR sued Mayfair Games for City State of the Invincible Overlord simply because Gygax wrote the foreword and was credited as the author of AD&D, which he was. And because of somehow her owning and him, this is after he was out of the company, and they sued them. And of course, everybody's heard of the suing for Dangerous Dimensions, right? Gygax's own game, because it was D&D. And he had to change it to Dangerous Journeys. Eventually, TSR bought that out from him. He couldn't win those suits because of cash. It wasn't because he was wrong, but they tried to get him for that. And so she does strike me as having a bit of a vendetta against Gary. Yeah. But to be fair, that could be an important thing. I mean, it could be I guess in the end, she did some good things. She did some bad things, but she was at the helm when it went down. So, comment about community, and I've heard this in a lot of places. I've heard Eric Tinkar talk about community, and I got a definition here, 2 of them. That's on the internet. It said a group of people living in the same place or having particular characteristic in common, or B, a feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. Is there a D&D community?
Well, the question is there a one? I would say no. I mean, we might have in common the hobby.
Right.
All of us.
Yes.
But
role-playing game hobby.
Beyond that, if you're going to say community, I would say the role-playing hobby is made up of many communities, not that the role-playing hobby is a community in and of itself. It's made up of many.
I would say even the D&D hobby is clearly made up of many communities.
Yeah, even the OSR
Itself is
had
made up of
it's
multiple.
yeah. Though the farther you drill down, the more you have cohesion. At least with the OSR, there is something beyond just the game itself. But then you have some fractioning in there as well.
Yeah.
So making it out to be a singular community is pretty much not true.
You,
And you know, I don't really care if there's a community or not, to be
right.
honest. I mean, I guess what we're doing with the podcast and asking people to listen and everything, we're maybe building a sort of community there.
Mm-hmm.
And I care about our gaming group.
Right.
Um, and the larger one, I mean, we have a table that we'll all sit down to, a smaller part of us, but we
Yes.
have about 20 guys, 20 maybe more, including
Mm-hmm.
wives and
Right.
girlfriends. And we are a kind of community.
Yep.
But I wouldn't, once you get much bigger than that, calling it a community is probably a misuse of terms.
Yeah, it's because it would be hard to find. Yeah. Sharing common attitudes. I mean, how many common attitudes do you have to share to be a community? 2,
Right.
1, 26. So yeah, and it's hard to say, I think.
Right.
Did you get a chance to watch the Gygax video you mentioned?
I just remember when it came up to him and he was on screen, he was kind of aggressive,
Yeah.
but I did not get a chance to look at it.
Well,
Did I remember it correctly?
I didn't see him do that. I was looking for him going really aggressive, but he was definitely offhandedly saying, yeah, this thing. It was Pat Pulling was on it too, the lady that brought Mothers Against DnD and was trying to say it was all bad. But anyway, yeah, he was very dismissive of the arguments, and it was on 60 Minutes. He might have been aggressive, but I had trouble watching the video because it was in 2 parts and it was a little screwed up. So, but it was kind of fun to watch it again when I could see. Yeah, I don't remember him come up in anybody's face, but he definitely seemed dismissive, and he definitely looked young. That was kind of neat to see him.
What I remember is that he was, I didn't remember him being very charismatic.
No, that was correct.
Yeah.
He didn't come off well on the screen.
Yeah, he didn't come off well. It's like, you shouldn't have put him there.
But he's not a politician. He's not an actor. And he's a perfect.
It's not a dig at him. They didn't have I'm sure they had a PR person by then that they could have put there, but he probably, I'm Gary, so I'm going to be the dude doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And then, I don't even know if I care about the next point. About women and CEOs. I mean, have a woman as a CEO. And he said something like, we have businesses now wrestling with the correct number of women in their employment. And I'm like, there's no such thing as that. There's not the correct number of men. There's not a correct number of women. There's a correct number of people you need to have there, and whatever they are is what they are. Yeah,
and quit. Yeah, I'm not down with quotas. People can believe whatever they want, but I'm not down with that.
Right. Did we kind of skip over?
We might have.
Number 3, don't need to be part of.
I think we had talked about it. Gygax's legacy. It was like.
Yeah, we did. We did talk.
Yeah, we kind of hit it all. So I don't go back to Labs Grognards or whatever. But yeah, like I don't mean to be bashing Scott, but like I said, I kept thinking, man, I wish I was there, especially with the comments about Gygax and history and Arneson. It's like, dude, I've just read this stuff. So, but I would suggest anybody
some crazy ideas.
Yeah, but it's probably coming from a place that he loves the game and he wants it to be better. He might be gung-ho about it, but I don't know what he thinks we can do. Because if we get in there, if we were to come as a group, as a small community, and all jump into 5e and start playing and trying to make comments to WotC, they would not want to hear what we have to say.
No.
So I don't care. They would proven they wouldn't, and I know they wouldn't. Just look at the newest Witchlight and Strixhaven, and the one before that was Strixhaven's not out yet, but the one, gosh, what was it? The one before Tasha's, where all of a sudden your race doesn't really matter. You just put your +2 wherever you want.
Right. And apparently we're supposed to just learn the language. He kind of give away part of him, the underlying. I think he wasn't really saying all of of his premise, because one of the things he says is we weren't willing to do the work, the hard work, we weren't. And generally, if someone says we've got to do the work,
Yeah.
it may not be,
Mm-hmm.
but with him, but a lot of progressive intersectional types use that phrase so that to people that, you know, you've got to do the work of, and then you either put feminism or anti-racism or some other ism, or some other thing, and you have to do the work.
Hand me Tasha's cauldron. I've got a black pen here. I'll do some work.
Yeah.
Do some work.
And
I'll mark out some crap.
You may think all of these things are fine, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a hobby. We're playing a game.
Mm-hmm.
It's not important beyond that. There's not some thing you can say more than it's important to me because I like to play and I like to hang out with my friends, and there is a cultural aspect to D&D, but it's confined within our hobby. It's not.
What about the children? What about the children, Joe? He did say that in a very careful way. What about the children?
He said that you need D&D. It has to be the D&D game, that if you're going to bring role playing to some essentially underprivileged children, and the things that can be positive about the game, which there are some, you know, if you use it correctly, you can use it to help you become better at reading, maybe better at writing,
maybe a little better at math,
maybe better at logic, maybe if you let it. It can help you in social situations if you let it.
Yep.
Some people don't let it because that's not peculiar to D&D though. Any kind of hobby or pastime or thing that brings people together to accomplish something cooperatively can have a lot of the same things positive about it that he attributes to just D&D. This is all D&D's thing. It's this thing that he called. I don't know.
What about chess? What
but
about war games?
He pretty much said you couldn't do it with another role playing game. You couldn't take 13th Age or Savage Worlds to that group of underprivileged children, teach them about role playing with that game. It has to be D&D.
I actually disagree with that because I believe specifically 13th Age would be a better tool to teach someone about role playing. And that's because I recently taught a 50-plus-year-old man in the last year or two, one of our friends that recently joined us in role playing, an older gentleman, how to play. And 13th Age was the simplest to wrap your mind around. There's less moving parts. And he's played 5e. He knows how it works, but 13th Age is a good intro. It absolutely is. I would probably argue 4th edition is probably better than 5th for that.
Right.
It's simple.
I mean, but there are, I don't even know how many games, role-playing games that you could do that with.
Thousands. Yeah. Now, I would admit I probably wouldn't begin with riffs, but you could.
You could. Know? It would be a mistake.
Yeah, I think it would be, but you could do that.
No. We could have handled riffs as our first game. Easily. I think that because we had D&D first and then riffs, and riffs was, the system was close enough to D&D that we were like, this is kind of like D&D, but does things weird.
Yeah.
We only think it's weird because we started with D&D.
Yeah, and because the rules aren't terribly good.
Yeah, there are some issues with the rules. There's some inconsistencies.
The world is so cool. It almost makes up for it.
It does. So yeah. Anyway, yeah. All right. So are we done beating this issue to death? I'm gonna have a link to the video. It is long. I don't step in until I'm almost an hour in.
Oh, I thought it was 10, 15 minutes.
I thought somebody else, I don't know how long honestly, I don't know how long they were on before I jumped in.
Not too, but it's worth listening to, folks. Definitely. Give it a listen. A lot of good comments and discussion.
I don't think it's ever going to be, it might at some point in the future be an audio format, but Max over at Legion of Myth is catching up. Well, their primary focus is on YouTube, on their video, on their, because they run live stream, and their primary focus is on that, and then they put the episodes out in whole on as a podcast, but it's delayed, and right now it's just under a year delayed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's very delayed. Well, part of it because he moved from he was in Germany for work, and then he moved back into the States, and it pushed and when that happened, lots of stuff got delayed. So
that's some of my concerns. Should we go to streaming if we're going to lose our, because Tinkar seems to, he hasn't given up, but he rarely gets the stuff posted up.
Well, yeah, that's not going to be me.
Yeah,
I stay up till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning to make sure we get something out.
You work so hard, man. I appreciate it.
So yeah, so moving along, to the contest.
Oh, I thought we were going to skip that till the end.
Well, we're going to skip doing it, but we can talk about it.
Oh yeah, the contest of champions. We're going to roll it at the end. Yeah.
At the end of the episode, we're going to do the, well, initially we're going to do it at the end because, well, I was going to suggest at the end so that we could give some folks that are supposed to be sending us their email, so I can to do that. But if they don't by the end of the recording, well, sucks to be them.
Yeah,
they can wait till the next cutoff
contest. So it sounds like we got 13 folks right now. Hopefully have more.
Yes.
And I got a D14, and I'm going to roll it and subtract 1, and we'll get to it again. I'll explain it again. And if I roll a 1, I'll roll again. So I don't have a D13. It's one of those beautiful Xochi dice for DCC, but I couldn't find my D13.
Dungeon Crawl Classics. You'd think they would have a D13. They have all kinds of other funky dice.
They probably do. I got a whole bag of them, but I didn't get to the whole thing. So,
but right before we started recording, though, we were having problems with the website. So I was like, well, it's a good thing. We'll just do it at the end anyway. We were even possibly going to just roll the dice and then announce later because we weren't sure if we were going to be able to do it. But we will
do it near the end. Yeah,
and we'll do it at the end. And we have.
Should I remind the folks what the books are, the prizes, or you want to go ahead and tell them? We have reached what? Go ahead, Joe.
We have reached 67 viewers on subscribers on YouTube. Due to, I think, 2 big inputs. One is the folks over at Legion of Myth.
Thank you, dudes.
They exist on YouTube and on Discord. I will have links to both. I think it's fine to, maybe I'll ask about the Discord link.
Yeah, maybe a private thing.
But it's not private. They have links to their Discord on their YouTube videos. So it's public knowledge already. I'll put it there.
We should have a Discord channel.
We do.
We do. Well, shoot. We need to get to it then. We need to be on it.
Yeah. Remember we were using Discord at first to record, and then
that's
it
true.
was real funky. It didn't really, it wasn't very intuitive how to do all the things we wanted to do, which weren't very many. Anyway, we've got 67 subscribers now. Still, it's kind of a disparity. Out of those 67 subscribers, only 13 of them felt the need to give us their email address so we can, so that they could fully participate. Yeah, fully participate in the contest.
They could win the most important.
It could be message. Yes, out of the
abyss. They could win Out of the Abyss, a 5e D&D supplement. You could help change the face of the world because D&D 5e is so important. If you win, you can have this. Or if you want to pull a little Pathfinder action, you could take Maximum X Scrawl. Pick that as your prize. Sweet. And if you're Savage Worlds, you could take Codus Infernus. So those are the 3 things that are up. Whoever wins gets to pick one of those 3 things, and I will ship it to them post haste.
Right. And so after today, we are going to have the next threshold be 100.
Okay. Cool.
I think that after 100, we should have bigger gaps,
Yeah,
like
maybe
two,
300.
250, 5,000, something
Yeah.
like that.
600 billion. Yeah. We'll
Yeah,
eventually get
600
to that.
billion.
The whole
So,
world.
yeah.
All right.
All right. So next, are we ready to move along?
Yeah, let's do it.
The next edition of D&D is it announced or is
Yeah.
it hinted
They
at? It's
Nope, they announced it. There's going to be the 50th anniversary in 2024. There will be an update to D&D thanks to Silent Josh. He got us toward this. We got the link at comicbooks.com. I don't know. There was a recent, was it PAX or something? There was some recent event where 4 or 5 of the Wizards bigwigs got on there and they said, yeah, and they gave some hints to what settings. There's like 3 new settings coming out, or Eberron was the first, and there's going to be 2 more. A lot of folks think the setting is going to be Planescape or Spelljammer because they're coming out with a book, Monsters of the Multiverse.
It's a
And
very short article.
yeah, well, they didn't say a whole lot.
Mm-mm.
And they basically said, yeah, we're going to put together some of the changes we made through Tasha's and the other books and make it official. And so,
is this going to be reprints?
Well, they're going to reprint all the core books, but I think they call it an update to the game. So,
well, what I'm saying by reprints, what I'm saying by reprints is if we take that literally, then what they're going to do is reprint online stuff into their hardbacks, which I think they said they were going to do anyway. But
yeah, and some of their I think you're going to get some of the crap from Tasha is going to go into the player's handbook. I mean, you know, you're going to be able to put your +2 wherever you want, probably, and you know, you can go to proms and stuff. And I don't know. I have no idea what they're going to be doing. Sounds
so crazy.
Totally, it's so crazy. So is it 5.5? They're not going to call it that.
No.
They're just going to say, they're saying you can play this with your old books too. And they always say that.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't play 3.5 with the old 3.0. I tried it. It was a mess.
No.
Power Attack was different in both games. So yeah, I'm going to say it's going to be 6th edition. Who knows, but it might be 5.5. I mean, they're just trying to sell more books and you can't blame them. And to be fair, 5th edition's 10 years old. So
when 3rd edition revised into 3.5,
yeah,
they said they were just going to change a couple of things, and what you ended up having was a new game. I mean, not terribly new, but new enough.
Yep. Well, you know, it's as old as 2E D&D went until 1989, was published in 89, and it went all the way to, I guess, 99. So it was a 10-year span. So you're looking at least as long as 2nd edition. By 2024, when this is coming out, 5e will be 10 years and 10 years old. And that's kind of the longest run they've ever had of a game. They're tying it. So to me, seems if they keep their pattern up, that's the right time for a 6e. They won't call it that. I think they'll eventually call it that. I think they'll say no. Then when it comes out, people are like, holy crap, this is really different. So
they've been numbering things. I mean, it's just, why wouldn't they? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, and I think they're trying to get away from using editions because they just want to get that upgrade all.
That's true. That's true. They might, yeah.
It'll be called Dungeons and Dragons Anniversary Books, and they're going to want new covers and all that poop. So
they're going to have. I really think they're going to end up changing their mind on that, because they're going to end up needing to call it something different than just Dungeons and Dragons, because it's going to cause some market confusion.
Yeah.
Which Dungeons and Dragons? What are you talking about? I mean, they may not. They may stick to their guns and just call it D&D. They may not have any kind of extra qualifier or anything like that. But I think I think it's at least even money that by the time it comes out, they'll have some sort of it'll say Dungeons and Dragons something. It won't just be And when they won't call it 5th edition, because it
No,
won't be.
no, it's not going to be 5th. Don't kid yourself. They've done it before. They've done it every time. They're going to. There was a 4.5. Essentials was 4.5. I don't care what anybody says. 3.5 came out. There was a 2.5. Players options was 2.5.
Yeah. They'll
Now,
call it
granted,
something.
At least 2.5 was truly optional. But
It
if you
said it
brought
right
it
in the
in,
title.
yeah, I mean, you could literally not, because we did. We can't. I bought the black books and didn't use them. I used high level campaigning, and that was it for ideas.
Right.
But the truth is, if you implemented at least a good chunk of that crap into your game, you're playing a different game.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's bad or good. It just was different.
Yeah.
And we'll see. I mean, I got a feeling 6th edition, this coming out, I think we're going to be somebody. I hope somebody we know buys one, because I want to borrow the book. And I want to review it, because I am not paying for it. I'm not paying a dime for it.
I'm not.
No way. I'm out. I'm out of that turnstile.
All
Well,
right.
hey.
Yes. Buy it if you want. I'm not. If you're a completionist, then you'll probably buy it no matter what. But
that is my nature, but I just don't know if I can do it. It would kill me. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, not excited.
No, not even remotely.
But it is news.
Yes.